On January 23, 2014, Josep Maria Bartomeu took office as interim president of Football Club Barcelona following the resignation of Sandro Rosell. What seemed like the beginning of a new golden era with the legendary MSN Messi, Suárez, and Neymar would soon turn into a nightmare. Only 5 years were enough for one man to destroy one of the greatest clubs in the world. In 2015, Bartomeu was elected official president, and from that moment on, his management plunged Barça into a debt of more than 1.3 billion euros and led to the departure of its greatest idol, Lionel Messi. This is the story of how a single president pushed Football Club Barcelona to the brink of total ruin. Let's begin. What we now know as the Barcelona hell was no coincidence. It was the result of years of bad decisions, corruption, and greed, disguised as success. But to understand how it all got to that point, we first have to look back to when the club sold its soul for money. Before Bartomeu sank Barcelona, another man lit the fuse. His name, Sandro Rosell. To understand his impact, we have to look a little further back, to a time when Barça was more than a club, and not just a slogan. From 2003 to 2010, with Joan Laporta as president, Barcelona was living through one of the most glorious periods in its history, with stars like Ronaldinho, Xavi, Iniesta, and Messi. And under the leadership of Pep Guardiola, the team didn't just win, it inspired. Barça was an example of sporting management and human values. Its academy, La Masia, produced stars trained under the same philosophy: collective play, humility, and discipline. And financially, the club was stable. They spent wisely and stayed true to their principles. It was an organization that represented something bigger than football, until everything changed. In 2010, Laporta left the presidency and Sandro Rosell took over. Rosell had previously worked with Nike and knew the world of marketing well. His vision was clear. Barça had to become a money-making machine. His motto wasn't more than a club. It was more than a business. Rosell didn't want to rely on social values or the youth academy. He wanted to exploit the Barcelona brand and attract international sponsors, especially from the Middle East. And that's when the club began to change its identity. For more than a century, Barca's jersey had been sacred. No logos, no brands, no advertising. It was a symbol of purity, of identity. In 2006, the club placed a logo on the shirt for the first time, UNICEF. But far from being a commercial sponsorship, it was a humanitarian gesture. Barcelona paid 1.5 million euros a year to UNICEF to support child aid programs. It was a message to the world. Our success also serves to do good. But in 2011, Rosell decided to break that tradition. He signed a deal with the Qatar Foundation for 30 million euros a year. The UNICEF logo was moved to the back, almost hidden. For the first time in history, Barça sold itself to a commercial brand. Many fans saw it as a betrayal of the club's values. It wasn't just a logo. It was the symbol of the end of an era. In 2013, Rosell was responsible for the most controversial signing of the moment, Neymar Jr. The club announced it had paid 57 million euros, but the real figure was much higher, 86 million. The rest was hidden in fake contracts and secret payments to the player's family. The difference wasn't just financial, it was internal corruption. Spanish authorities began an investigation, and when the truth came out, Rosell was charged with fraud and embezzlement. In 2014, he was forced to resign. But before leaving, he left the club divided, in debt, and without a moral compass. Meanwhile, Rosell had also begun to neglect La Masia, Barcelona's most valuable jewel. During the Guardiola era, great heroes like Xavi, Iniesta, Puyol, and Pedro had come from that academy. But under Rosell, the philosophy changed. The focus was no longer on developing talent, but on buying it. The club began signing expensive players, leaving young prospects without opportunities. Little by little, Barca's DNA started to disappear. When Rosell resigned, the damage was already done. He had planted the seeds of disaster. Corruption, loss of identity, and a management style focused solely on money. And the man who stood by his side throughout that entire process was his vice president, Josep Maria Bartomeu, the same man who, years later, would take Barça to the brink of total collapse. When Sandro Rosell stepped down in 2014 after the Neymar case scandal, his position was taken by his right-hand man, Josep Maria Bartomeu. At first glance, he seemed like the man who could bring stability. He was an engineer, a businessman with experience in corporate management. But his arrival was more a continuation of the problem than a solution. Bartomeu had learned everything from Rosell: the obsession with business, marketing, fast money, and a complete lack of understanding of real football. At that time, Barça was still shining. They had Messi, Suárez, Neymar, and a dream squad. But beneath the trophies, a colossus of sand was already being built, one that would soon collapse. In his first full year as president, Bartomeu won everything: La Liga, the Copa del Rey, and the Champions League. The famous MSN, Messi, Suárez, Neymar, were the terror of Europe. The fans were happy. Bartomeu ran for election and won by a large majority. Everything seemed perfect. But that success was a dangerous illusion. While the team was winning on the field, the club was sinking in the boardrooms. Signings became more and more expensive, salaries kept rising, and there was no sporting strategy. Bartomeu confused spending a lot with spending well. Between 2014 and 2020, Barcelona spent more than €1 billion on players. And most importantly, very few of them worked out. It all began with Neymar's money. In 2007, PSG paid his release clause of €222 million, a record-breaking figure. It was the perfect opportunity to rebuild the team. But what came next was a chain of catastrophic mistakes. Bartomeu and his board panicked. Instead of planning, they rushed into signings, trying to replace Neymar without thinking. They bought Ousmane Dembélé for €105 million plus €40 million in add-ons. Philippe Coutinho for €120 million plus €40 million in add-ons. Antoine Griezmann for €120 million. 3 players. More than €400 million, and none of them delivered. Dembélé was constantly injured, Coutinho never fit into the system, and Griezmann got lost in a scheme that didn't understand him. Years later, all 3 would be sold or loaned out for less than €100 million combined. An unprecedented financial disaster. But signings weren't the only problem. Bartomeu began paying absurd salaries to keep the stars happy. The club's wage bill skyrocketed to more than €600 million per year, the highest in the history of world football. Injured players or bench warmers were earning unimaginable amounts. Coutinho, more than €400,000 per week. Umtiti, €200,000 per week. Busquets and Alba, $250,000 and $400,000 per week, respectively. Even Messi, although he earned it through performance, had a contract that cost $55 million per season. Barça was spending more than it earned. It was like a family going deeper into debt every year just to keep up the appearance of luxury. As the money evaporated, the football disappeared as well. The team lost its soul, its identity, its style, and the results reflected it. Rome 2018. Barça win 4-1 in the first leg and lose 3-1 in the return leg. Eliminated. Liverpool 2019. 3-0 at Camp Nou, then 4-0 at Anfield. Another humiliation. Bayern Munich 2020. A historic 8-2 that went around the world. 3 consecutive years of international embarrassment. 3 blows that made it clear Barcelona was no longer the same. Members and fans no longer trusted Bartomeu. The club looked like it was being run like a soulless corporation. Internal propaganda departments were created, hiring companies to improve the president's image and attack critical players and journalists. Yes, even Messi. The scandal, known as Barçagate, revealed that the club had paid hundreds of thousands of euros to manipulate public opinion on social media. Bartomeu no longer represented Barça. He represented himself. In just 6 years, Bartomeu turned the most admired club in the world into an institution that was indebted, divided, and humiliated. He spent more than 1 billion euros without building a real project. He lost the respect of the players, the members, and the fans. And worst of all, he broke Barca's identity. The same club that had once been an example of values, youth development, and humility had turned into a caricature of itself. But the worst was still to come. Because after the sporting disaster, the biggest economic crisis in its history would arrive. And the final blow, the departure of Lionel Messi. For years, Josep Maria Bartomeu tried to hold together a club that was falling apart. While members protested and defeats piled up, he insisted that everything was under control. But the truth was impossible to hide. Football Club Barcelona was morally and financially bankrupt. And in 2020, the castle of lies he had built began to collapse, brick by brick. The numbers didn't lie. Barcelona owed more than 1 billion euros. Of that amount, more than 730 million were short-term debts, money that had to be paid in less than a year. The club wasn't generating enough revenue. Its wage bill was the highest in the world, and its multi-million euro signings weren't delivering results. When the COVID-19 pandemic hit, the disaster accelerated. With no fans at Camp Nou, no ticket sales, no merchandising or tourism, Barca lost more than 200 million euros in a single year. Bartomeu's business model, based on spending more than the club had, collapsed. As the finances burned, the locker room also turned into a battlefield. The players, led by Lionel Messi, refused to accept further pay cuts without transparency. They wanted to know where the money had gone. But Bartomeu responded with manipulation and lies. Through the scandal known as Barçagate, it was revealed that the club had hired companies to attack players and opponents on social media, including Messi, Piqué, and Guardiola. The locker room broke apart, trust disappeared, and Messi, for the first time in his career, sent a formal notice demanding to leave the club. On August 25, 2020, the world stood still. Messi wanted to leave Barcelona. The greatest player in the club's history, the symbol of the Barca DNA, felt betrayed by the board. In his interview, Messi was clear. There is no longer a project. Things are improvised, and holes are patched as they appear. Bartomeu refused to let him go, hiding behind a contract clause and his own ego. The player stayed, but his soul did not. The relationship between Messi and the club was never the same again. Meanwhile, Barcelona's members had had enough. In 2020, a group led by Jordi Farré presented a vote of no confidence. Within weeks, they gathered more than 20,000 signatures calling for Bartomeu's resignation. Discontent spread across Catalonia. Protests outside Camp Nou. Banners reading, "Bartomeu, resign now." Journalists, former players, and even club employees demanding his departure. Bartomeu tried to resist. He even attempted to postpone the elections, citing health-related reasons. But it was already too late. On October 26, 2020, after 6 years in charge and millions in losses, Josep Maria Bartomeu resigned as president. Without glory, without respect, and leaving behind a club on the edge of the abyss. When Joan Laporta returned to power in 2021, he found the worst financial situation in the club's 120-year history, a total debt of 1.35 billion euros, contracts that were impossible to pay, players with absurd clauses, and a wage bill the club could no longer afford. Laporta summed it up with a brutal sentence: "Barca is technically bankrupt." The hardest blow came in August 2021. Even though Messi had agreed to cut his salary in half, La Liga's financial rules did not allow his registration. Barca couldn't afford to pay him even the reduced contract. And the idol, the captain, the soul of the club, had to leave for PSG on a free transfer. Camp Nou was left empty, not just of people, but of hope. October 26, 2020 marked the end of a presidency that will go down in history as one of the worst administrations in modern football. Bartomeu didn't just destroy a winning team, he destroyed an identity. Barca stopped being more than a club and became a broken mirror of what it once was. But among the ruins, a new opportunity began to emerge. Laporta had returned, and with him, the promise of a new beginning. The year is 2021. FC Barcelona is on the edge of the abyss. A debt of 1.35 billion euros threatens to destroy everything. The team is broken, directionless, without its captain and symbol Lionel Messi. Fans live caught between anger and sadness. But in the middle of the chaos, a familiar figure appears once again. Joan Laporta, the same president who in 2003 led Barca into its most glorious era, with Ronaldinho, Guardiola, and Messi. His return was not just a sporting decision, it was a declaration of faith. We are going to give Barcelona back its dignity. Laporta, 2021 campaign speech. When Laporta took office in March 2021, he encountered a reality worse than expected. More than 730 million euros in short-term debt, bloated contracts and wages impossible to pay, an aging, unmotivated squad, and a stadium, Camp Nou, suffering from structural deterioration. Barca, quite literally, didn't even have enough money to pay its full payroll. Laporta stated it bluntly to the press. The club is technically bankrupt, but not morally dead. That was the starting point. A complete rebuild. Laporta knew he couldn't save the club by cutting expenses alone. He needed fast money and a lot of it. That's how the so-called financial levers were born. Risky but necessary decisions to keep the club alive. In 2022, Barca sold 10% of its television rights to the company 6th Street for 207 million euros. Then it sold an additional 15%, bringing in more than 400 million euros in total. It also sold part of Barca Studios, its audio-visual production arm, to generate immediate liquidity. These operations made it possible to pay salaries, register new signings, and avoid sanctions. But they came at a cost. The club committed part of its future revenue for 25 years. It was a desperate gamble, but an effective one. Laporta knew that without those levers, Barca could disappear as a major power. As the finances stabilized, Laporta also knew Barca needed to recover its footballing soul. The first step was bringing back a son of the club, Xavi Hernandez. We have to return to the Barca style, to the football that made us great. Xavi. Under his leadership, the team began a rebuild from the academy. Young players like Pedri, Gavi, Ansu Fati, Alejandro Balde, and Lamine Yamal became the new face of the club. They were no longer multi-million euro signings. They were kids developed at La Masia, the heart Bartomeu had forgotten. And little by little, the identity began to bloom again. In the 2022-2023 season, against all odds, Barcelona won La Liga with organized, solid football full of spirit. It wasn't Guardiola's team, but it was a symbol of resilience. After years of humiliation, Barca felt great again. Laporta celebrated it like this. This title is the beginning of a new era. Barca is back. One of the most symbolic decisions of the rebirth was the deal with Spotify. For the first time, the stadium's name changed, from Camp Nou to Spotify Camp Nou. Many fans felt uncomfortable, but Laporta defended it as a necessary step toward modernization. The deal not only brought in millions in sponsorship, but also a connection with a new, global generation of fans. Barca understood that to survive, it had to adapt without losing its essence. Laporta also launched the Espai Barça project, a complete renovation of Camp Nou and its surroundings. The new stadium is not just concrete and steel, but a symbol of institutional rebirth. The goal: to create a sustainable, digital, global club that is proud of its history. Joan Laporta did not solve every problem. Barça still has debt, limitations, and a long road ahead. But he brought back something money can't buy: hope. Today, Barcelona is no longer a club running from its past, but one that learns from it. From Bartomeu's ruins, a new vision emerged. Younger, more aware, and more faithful to its DNA, Barça is being reborn. And this time, it's doing so while looking to the future without forgetting who it is. When Rosell resigned, the damage was already done. He had planted the seeds of disaster, corruption, loss of identity, and management focused solely on money. And the man who stood by his side throughout that entire process was his vice president, Josep Maria Bartomeu. The same man who, years later, would take Barça to the brink of total collapse. Laporta brought back hope, but the real challenge has not yet begun. Will he be able to keep the dream alive, or will the past destroy it once again? Leave it in the comments. And don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and get ready. Because what's coming will change the history of Barcelona forever.